Hey everybody, how are you guys doing? I'm Eric Airlock, and this is another talk on Chinese philosophy and Neo-Confucianism, as well as a bit of the theatrics of the cats. The other one is at my feet, and he's all stretched out. Yes. Anywho's, that is the floor show, and what we have here is a talk on Neo-Confucianism, and this is going to finish out the talks on Confucianism with Zhu Si, and then I will do a separate short talk on Wang Yangming. So this is a talk on Neo-Confucianism and the Chang Brothers and Zhu Si. It's sort of a talk on Zhu Si as the head Neo-Confucian, and then next I will have a short separate talk on one of my favorite of the Confucians, Wang Yangming. I do like Confucianism a lot. It is not entirely my philosophy, but it is fantastic and has so many interesting twists and turns. Hopefully you've seen some of the videos, listened to some of it. I simply try to point out the best parts and the worst parts, all of it, and show how amazing the core concepts are for the average student and person out there. And with all of that, Zhu Si is not entirely my guy. He's a bit uptight, but Wang Yangming is quite amazing, and he has some very interesting thoughts and practices. So we will get to that next time, but here we are going to do a short talk about Neo-Confucianism and Zhu Si and the Cheng Brothers just before him. This is not, again, my area of particular expertise, but I do know enough about early Confucianism that then giving a concluding talk on Neo-Confucianism and then a bit on Wang Yangming is certainly awesome. So, Confucianism, of course, began with Confucius. It follows with the work of Mencius, Sun Tzu, and others I have just been covering, and after a long period of losing ground in the imperial court to Buddhism and Taoism in different periods, and I have many a talk on Chinese philosophy, watch all the Chan stuff and the Taoist stuff, and that will show you a lot. Confucianism experienced a revival in Song Dynasty China. About 1100 CE, so during the Song Dynasty, from 960 to 1279, right in the middle of it, Confucianism merged with Taoist and Buddhist ideas to form a Confucian revival called Neo-Confucianism by scholars today. Just like Platonism and Neoplatonism, they wouldn't have called it Neoplatonism, really. We call all this Neo-Confucianism and Neoplatonism in that we are talking about labels these guys would not have entirely used, but we group them together with these concepts, we, Chinese scholars, others, as best we can, by calling them neo-whomevers. So yes, so they did not call themselves Neo-Confucians, and the Platonists of the Renaissance did not call themselves Neoplatonists, but I call the Neoplatonists of the Renaissance Neoplatonists. I already did. So, Buddhism, including both Chan and Pure Land schools, very much a little bit intellectual, known for the koan cases, and the Pure Land, known for devotional worship practices, and are a little bit, interestingly, Protestant in outlook and practice, had flourished during the Tang, 618 to 907. Most of the great masters and their koan encounters had happened during this period, and then the koan collections, such as the Blue Cliff Record, were collected and codified during the Song. So the Song, as I already argue, is the time when, in fact, Linji's house, Rinzai for the Japanese, becomes Zen Buddhism itself. So oddly enough, you have the Neo-Confucians going on and having a revival around the same time in the earlier Song, even though that Zen Buddhism has also becoming a thing. Technically, Chan Buddhism, which is known more popular by the Japanese name Zen Buddhism is getting going in China during the Tang when all of the great masters live, and when the great cats, yes, are down here. I'm not as important, as the cats. Anyway, yes. They are wrestling during dynastic times. And may you live with interesting cats, hopefully. So most of, you have here, the Neo-Confucians are actually codifying Confucianism and making it more like Taoism and Buddhism, and making it a bit cosmic and about the eternal kind of cosmic law, as not only Pure Land Buddhism is going on and making massive, amazing systems of Buddhism, but you have Zen Buddhism also as a reaction to all of those other kinds of Buddhism going on in the Song imperial court. Without Song support of both, oddly, Zen Buddhists and Neo-Confucians, you would not have both Zen Buddhism and Confucianism as we have it today, brought down from 1,000 years ago in China. And those two philosophies being supported by the empire are wildly different. It is weirdly like the Han supporting both Confucian. There's La Cucaracha, the taco truck food truck outside. Again, promptly, well, it's 11:22, just before 11:30 on the hour, So, and again, gotta pause and appreciate. So with what you have here is Neo-Confucianism. Confucianism and Zen Buddhism are very different systems. I have been intrigued by work that actually does say, Zen Buddhism and Confucianism are actually similar in a lot of weird ways. They are, and I didn't notice that at first, and that work is really cool. My kind of stuff. But Neo-Confucianism is very much how we get Confucianism today, and China codifies it, and in the song very much. It was before by the Han. But what you find is, just like in the Han, supporting Confucianism and then weirdly Taoism on the side, even though those are very different diametrically opposed philosophies. In the Song Imperial Court, they not only support Zen Buddhism such that it becomes Zen Buddhism with the House of Linji, Rinzai to the Japanese, Chan for China, Zen for Japan, and thus for Americans, after World War II increasingly. That's when they would know of Zen at all, by any name of a rose. That with all of this stuff, you have the Song Court very much imitating the Han, who were imitating the Zhou, and saying we are supporting diverse philosophies. They supported both. First, I believe, in order, I'd have to check my dates again, honestly, is Zen Buddhism in the early song, and then mid-song you have a Confucian revival up and against and along with, which is a very different philosophy, also being supported by probably warring factions of different courts vying for power and presenting different philosophies that are increasingly syncretized such that Confucianism is cosmic and Buddhistic, and could talk to Taoism back and forth, but actually, Zhu Si says, as the head Neo-Confucian, but we're also fighting Buddhism and Taoism, and this is really the true philosophy, is Confucianism. And Confucianism is actually sort of the primary philosophy of China, with Taoism massive, but somewhat secondary in the Han, and then Buddhism joins at the end of the Han, and Taoism and Buddhism have been climbing up against in the dynasties. Confucian's primary place in the Han original great dynasty of ancient China following the Warring Cat period. We are a bit blinded by the light, but those are two cats in the light a-fightin'. Speaking of warring dynasties and empires, and other systems of thinking and talking, so what was happening was the Neo-Confucians sought to take the flagging Confucian orthodoxy and put it once again at the center of education and society after losing ground to Buddhism for 500 years. Buddhist metaphors such as the pearl at the bottom of the muddy lake and the sun emerging from behind the clouds, as well as Taoist concepts, were reinterpreted in light of Confucianism, giving them an active educational and moral interpretation. About 1100 CE, during the Song dynasty, Confucianism merged all these ideas today and were called and merged with Taoist and Buddhist metaphors to form a Confucian revival, again called Neo-Confucianism today. Buddhism, including both Chan and Pure Land schools, had flourished during the Tang. I believe I am reiterating and reciting the notes again. My apologies. But essentially, I see. My apologies. Actually, my notes are in error. I have repeated the same paragraph twice. Sorry about that. And in fact, I am going to get to editing the videos and putting images in, so that will be part of the clipped out. My apologies, folks. These are works in progress. I am getting the rough cuts up as quick as possible, and I will continue to reform them a la the editing tools as time allows. So, basically, let's go on here to the Chang Brothers. Yes, and yes, my apologies. The Chang Brothers, Cheng Hao, who lived from 1032 to 1085, and Cheng Yi, who ever so slightly followed his brother, not in 1032 but 1033, to 1107, actually outliving his brother quite a bit. Cheng Hao, the elder, and Cheng Yi, the 1 year younger, were two philosophers, teachers, and officials whose work and schools led to the Neo-Confucian revival. There is, I believe, Graham has a work, two Chinese philosophers. It's a book. Very little is, again, published in English about Chinese philosophy still. I mean, some, but still. And so there is a book, I believe, two Chinese philosophers about the Chang Brothers, because they are neglected and it is called two Chinese. And you're like, which? Well, these two brothers, actually. It could be like two brothers who are Chinese philosophers, but yeah, again, snappier title. Simple. So together with Zhu Si, who is the major Neo-Confucian who follows the work, studies with, and follows the Cheng Brothers, and then officially founds, in a sense, Neo-Confucian, though not by that name, as the new kind of Confucian orthodoxy. He's the guy, Mencius with Mencius, who pulls Mencius out and says, it's the Analects, Mencius, and the two, and pulls out the book of the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean from the Book of Rites. Again, how much ever Confucius did or didn't pull those stuff out or pull it together, it is Neo-Confucian and Zhu Si who learns from these two Cheng brothers, Cheng Hao and Cheng Yi, and then he develops Neo-Confucianism into its orthodoxy and those four texts, such that the Jesuits, about 500 years later, would be picking up Mencius and Confucius and Latinizing those two names and not others, as I continue to mention through the work. So Zhu Si is their primary, most famous student who becomes the Neo-Confucian, following their work and merging it together with other things, bringing it all together. The two Cheng brothers, Cheng Hao and Cheng Yi, and Zhu Si, are considered the founders of Neo-Confucianism. Their father, the Cheng brothers, not Zhu Si, he had a different dad, their father was a country detective in Huangpi of Central East China. I'm going to do a lot more about detective work and Edgar Allan Poe and his detective stories and what precedent there is in China at all for my own understandings, because actually I have yet to brush up on Chinese detective stories. I actually own a little bit, but I have yet to read through and work through the stuff. He's a country detective, and there is, like Columbo. Now, sir, can I ask you just one more question? I won't subject you to my extended Columbo, and I assure you, they're quite extended, Columbo impersonations. But basically, in detective stories in China, before similar stories in English and other things, you sometimes see the crime occur and you know what's happening as the audience, and then you watch the detective try to figure it out and chase the criminal while the criminal evades the detective. That is actually very much Columbo, is the 70s detective show, which I loved as a kid. Yes, sir. And it's he's very much a Chinese Taoist sage, and I will mention other things of this, unintentionally, intentionally, I don't know. But I am going to do more videos about Taoism, Chinese detective work, deception, and also being Columbo. I totally will. And so you have here that I just have to mention, with the Chinese detective stories and cultural history, apparently parrot jokes originally come from India, where the parrot squawks and says something inappropriate. That's apparently first recorded in India. Why wouldn't it be? Parrot talks any language, or squawks it. I'm not sure the animal behavioral psychology here. If this is psychology, behavior is, etc. I assume the parrot has a mind. What is it, buddy? I assume my cat is a crowing. Yes, the cats, they will crow, and the parrots fly home. So, Cheng, known as Cheng the Elder and Cheng the Younger, I misspelled one of them. That's great. Cheng the Elder and Cheng the Younger, even though they're separated by only a year, elder brother over younger brother. That's very Confucian, one of the five. Cheng Hao was known for being happy and laid back. Cheng Yi, the younger, was strict and uptight. I imagine that would be a great... I hope that in China there are amusing cartoons about the Cheng brothers, but if there are not, there certainly should be. Both brothers believe in Li. Tradition, ritual, education. It's good to be a Confucian and believe in Li, given everything I've been saying, which, as mentioned with Chinese Buddhism, is now not simply tradition, principle, and ritual, but cosmic. It's identified not just with the book learning, but with the Dharma of Buddhism and the Tao of Taoism, which are sort of the cosmic law, physics up above the empire and the gods. Both identify Li with physical form and purpose, beyond ritual and tradition, just as the Buddha's teachings and Taoist sages' ways of living were identified with the law of the universe. You see the Dharma wheel. Buddhism originally is very simple. There's a wheel of stuff, and that is just our practices. And then it very quickly and in ways becomes it is the cosmic law for even early Buddhism. And so that you find here something where in early Confucianism, and scholars say this, it is not simply my interpretations. Scholars have very much argued in later decades. You find Neo-Confucianism is where Confucianism goes from a simple kind of sacred and wonderful, but identified very much with pragmatics and ethics in the state, to being a bit more metaphysical and cosmic during the height of the Song, which of course is majestic empire. Beyond even the Han, as a much larger, more prosperous, thriving, full The Tang and the Song are often compared to sort of the Renaissance to early modern Europe. So think about, and this is where we get gears and the chain drive, many things from Song China. So printing, so thinking about, how Song China is going off and they're having these different philosophies and ways of doing things, and how everything is becoming kind of metaphysical and physics and cosmic established. It's very much similar to a lot of the European philosophy I have been covering, especially the early moderns. It sounds a lot like Europeans learning to still be religious, but do more and more mechanics and science. And now there are cosmic laws that are quite up there as the whole structure of the universe. The split is along classic lines here a little bit, with the elder laid-back Cheng Hao founded the School of Mind, arguing that Li is a little bit more psychological and mental, while the younger uptight Cheng Yi founded the School of Law, arguing that Li is a bit more physical. And down here, take that however ways you will. The split along is a little bit along the classic lines of dogmatic and skeptical, but again, it would get complex. And in fact, the less is known about these guys than other guys, and in fact, that which I know is little. Much like the work of Plato and Neoplatonism of medieval Europe, the Chang Brothers saw Li, form, combined with Qi, energy, as the composition of all things. Those sorts of backs and forths are very much human psychological modeling, scientific modeling, etc., I would argue. The noble and the sages seek the forms of things. So this takes us from the Chang Brothers to Shu Si. And if we have enough time here, actually, I might just go through Wang Yang Ming and all of the Neo-Confucian stuff because I don't have much on Shu Si either, to be completely honest, and I've already said much of what I would say about him, in fact, because he is the one who comes along and codifies all of this and into the fore. Shu Si is spelled, and I am trying to be Si, like with a little H on the beginning, like Sun Se. Zhu, Z-H-U, Zhu Si, like H-S-I, which is X-I. So Zhu Si, I sometimes joke it's juicy, like Notorious B.I.G. Living 1130 to 1200, abouts. Also known as Master Zhu, which would be Zhu Xi, was the systematizer who took the work of the Cheng Brothers and others and created the educational system of China that lasted almost 600 years from 1313 to 1905. He was taught in the lineage of Cheng Yi and the School of Law, the uptight younger, and argued that, not Pliny the Elder, he argued that Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, the three great Chinese traditions, were teaching the same truth, but that Confucius is the superior and primary teacher, which is him saying, no, it's all the same, but we are superior. Like Confucius, he gathered a small canon of 4 books, already mentioned, the Analects of Confucius, the book on Confucius, the book on Mencius, the Mencius, which Sun Tzu writes his own text. He does not include that in the 4. He shuns Sun Tzu, the last guy. So you have the record of Confucius, and about him it was things written. You have the record about Mencius that others wrote. Then you have the 2, which Zhu Si would probably say were original texts, not written by Confucius, but were just as they were classics, and Confucius preserved them and pointed them out as he does this. The Doctrine of the Mean and the Great Learning as the 2 passages from the Book of Rites. Oh, what is it, buddy? What is it, sweetie? What is that on your face? Well, we're going to get to a moralizing with the cats here in a second, but I got to cover the Wang Yang Ming before I cover the cats with kisses. So, you have the canon of 4 books and my distractions with the cats. Zhu Si put a heavy emphasis on reading and study. That's important here for Neo-Confucian to Wang Yang Ming next here. You guys. Perhaps actually, yes. I will, in fact, break this talk into a 20-minute talk. It's already getting there. I will break off the Wang Yang Ming into another segment, which is fine and good. Why not keep the minutes here and there? So, Zhu Si puts a very heavy emphasis on reading and study, particularly rereading the right books again and again to understand the essence of morality and principle. Now, guess how Wang Yang Ming is going to react against that if I phrase it like that ahead of time for you at the end here? Well, there is putting a heavy emphasis on theory, on reading and study, but in fact, Confucius has many loving passages about right outer form with right inner intent, and the right outer form of scholarship is not okay. So Wang Yang Ming who is living about 300 years after Zhu Si, is not of the same generation at all. He is looking at Neo-Confucianism of the Zhu Si and Cheng brother and Cheng the uptight younger more so mold, and pushing back against it with a bit of psychology, some say a bit of Cheng Hao, and practice over mere theory, which would be oddly a really interesting way of complementing outer form with inner intent. Yes, because Wang Yongming is actually giving us another side of this, which is Zhu Si is nice, but so are my cats making noise. But I am too, sadly. It annoys them, I'm sure. If you have the right intent, you should see it reflected outwardly in practice. So oddly enough, you don't want, worst thing ever would be to have the appearance of scholarship and then not have knowledge and wisdom and etc. that you are teaching, ways and means of teaching people. But if you're studying and not, say, teaching people or doing good with it, well, then you don't have the right form following from the inner intent, which is a very interesting complementary position to put. That is very Confucian. It is kind of complementary other side of the coin, not contradictory, and that's because of the heavy emphasis Zhu Si puts on book learning and study, which Confucius did too, says meditation is useless, and oddly Wang Yongming does dabble a bit in Taoist and Buddhist meditation, and is accused of doing so. So that said, I am going to find out what exactly my cats are destroying. And other than that, I am going to rein in the cats, again, a la Sun Tzu. Morality for the cats. It's again, I tell the cats all the time, you are going to college. It means nothing. As Marge Simpson says, I just realized the dog and cat have been living together for this long. They've been living in sin. So, that said, much love again. And, happiness, love, reigning in the cats and the heart. And I shall see you, if and when I ever see you.